Okay, so I think we can start. So welcome everyone to the day 7 of the EAMS 2022. My name is Jared Ongaro and I'm welcoming you all live from Nairobi, Kenya. And today, this morning, we will be having our two talks, and I'm very pleased that our first talk will be developing online workbooks for engineering and STEM mathematical education from Konstantina Sheva from the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. So Dr. Konstantin, please go ahead, share your screen, and please feel warmly welcome to the EAMS 2022. Thank you.
Hello, thanks. So I'll share my screen.
Yes, as she shares the screen, please. Yeah, the Moodle is done. Thank you.
Okay, so does anyone see my screen? Is it fine? Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm Konstantina Zerva and I work at the University of Edinburgh, the School of Mathematics. And my talk is about developing online workbooks for engineering and STEM mathematical education. So here is the outline of my talk. I'll start by introducing the Helm workbooks, which were the basis of this project. Then I'll explain the underlying pedagogy of the online workbooks and briefly introduce Stack. I'll describe how we transform the Helm workbooks into online Stack workbooks, and finally, how we use them in our teaching during the last 2 academic years. So the mathematical education of engineers and scientists is important, and it's quite common for the mathematics department to offer service teaching to the engineering departments. So the Helm workbooks are a series of flexible workbooks for engineers, which cover the basic engineering, mathematics, and statistics teaching for first and second year students in a typical UK undergraduate engineering course, but probably not only UK course, because I think engineering education will be more or less the same around the globe. So the Helm workbooks were developed by the Helm Consortium, led by the Loughborough University. So the project funded by a grant from the Higher Education Funding Council for England, and it took 3 years to develop. Originally, Helm had online support, but all that remained in 2020 were the PDF files of the 50 workbooks. So I'll try to show you, hopefully now that I clicked on the link, you see what opened. I always feel confused with Zoom. So as you can see, they cover from basic algebra, functions, trigonometry, matrices, vectors, complex numbers, like in derivatives, integrals, and more advanced materials like eigenvalues and eigenvectors, Fourier transform series. Then later on, they cover basic probability and statistics. So more or less all the topics that engineers need. So okay, I went back on the talk. So what is the underlying pedagogy we had in mind when we started translating the Helm PDF files to online workbooks? As we said here in Edinburgh, we try to put the book inside the quiz. So all materials are inside the quiz, the written notes, the video clips, the online assessments. And we started this process back in 2018. So in the summer of 2018, a colleague of mine, George Kinner, and Richard Gradwick, they created the Fundamentals of Algebra and Calculus course, which is a fully online course. It is designed to help students who come from a wide range of backgrounds for study at the University of Edinburgh. The central idea behind the course is to put the book inside the quiz. So all the text, the videos, and the worked examples, the practice questions, they are not into, all of them are into a sequence of online quizzes. So the quizzes are the organizing structure to promote engagement. The development of Fundamentals of Algebra and Calculus was informed by previous educational research on mastery learning. Students need to score more than 80% to pass each week's assessment. So I also have a link that goes to our demo server, and you can see a week of FSC structure if you want to dig a bit deeper on that. So very briefly, and without going into technical details, I'll introduce Stack. Stack is an open source system for mathematics and sciences, and it's an optional plugin for the Moodle Queen and for EAMS system that used in Germany. It uses the computer algebra system Maxima, and students can type an answer at the form of algebraic expression. And of course, with Stack, we don't stay on multiple choice questions, but we can assess more advanced things. So Stack has a lot of key features. Teachers should be able to write their own questions with minimal coding skills. And what is very useful is that Stack separates validity from correctness. So when the students type an answer that is invalid, let's say they type sign X without having like brackets, they will receive a message that this is invalid. So they can change it and they won't mark down for technicality. So with Stack, multi-part questions are possible, and it's rich in features. The questions can be randomized. We have different types of inputs like algebraic input, matrices, numerical input. It's possible to give partial credits. Plots can be dynamically generated and they can follow the randomization. And we provide full support for scientific units. So I just have the link for our demo server if you want to get engaged more in Stack. And of course, Stack was developed mainly by Chris Sanquin, who is professor at the University of Edinburgh. Tim Hunt and Matti Harula are between the main developers. So we have all the good tools for online assessment of mathematics, and we try to use these tools effectively. So on the summer of 2020, we tried to combine the FSC, the Fundamentals of Algebra and Calculus structure, and Helm, and create comprehensive workbooks for engineers and scientists, which are based on coherent and tested resources. And each individual PDF file, which is like a Helm section, is a manageable size, so it's worthwhile to create it as an online quiz. So how we did it? So the project, we hired interns primarily from the University of Edinburgh and Loughborough University. So they converted Helm source into Moodle. They implemented questions within Stack where possible. Sometimes they also created some multiple choice Moodle questions and other Moodle question types. So the Stack questions, we tried to have sensible randomization. We wanted every question to have fully written work solutions. And we deployed variables in every question. We created test cases and tried to have sensible question notes. And of course, they had to follow strict style guide and authoring guidelines so that all the quizzes and all the workbooks are coherent. Then when each of the interns translated one of the PDF into a whole online quiz, the work was reviewed mainly by me to deal with any Stack issues. And then the work was reviewed by the course organizer to focus mainly in issues in like how the educational resources were presented. And at the end, most of the quizzes were tested by undergraduate students, probably to find some small typos and do some small edits. Of course, this process was very challenging because we had 16 interns, 16 PhD students, all of them were new to Stack, and we hired them for a few months during summertime. So the speed of work varied significantly, and we see varied use of Stack. Probably some of you have already used Stack on your assessment, so you know that it has a bit of steep learning curve. So you need a few weeks to sort of feel more confident and start creating better Stack questions. So we had a lot of interns needed different times to feel confident. So there was no clear understanding what a fully worked solution is. So Helm provided the final answer for every question. And sometimes the interns just put the final answer as work solution, like this integral is equal to that, without having the steps in between. So meaningless question notes. So I'll explain in the next slide what I mean with that. So when a question has randomization, we need to write a question note. Otherwise, it's impossible to save the question. So this question note, we always tell people to put something meaningful there, not just the random variables, so that when you go back to the question, you understand what all this thing is about. So alt text. So for every image we had into Helm, first of all, we transformed it to SVG file, but for every image we had to fill in the alt text for accessibility reasons. So in some places that wasn't sufficient at the beginning. Of course, workbooks completed out of sequence, so we didn't receive every workbook in order, like what we need for the few weeks in our teaching. It didn't come like as a first workbook, and we had to give repetitive feedback to different authors. So I think here I have a screenshot of what I mean meaningless question note. And really, if you write stuck questions, try to take care of your notes. Okay, you make a big favor to your future self and to your colleagues if you share questions. So here is a screenshot of like a few deployed variables in one question, and it's just a list of numbers. Okay, like I don't think by just seeing this note, you really get anything about the question or what is the solution here. So try to write something meaningful. I don't know, having the function. If these are answers, just say what they are. So here is like a wave function. The things students are asked to find: the amplitude, the frequency, the period. I mean, you can edit the question note even more. I didn't put any units here, okay? But at least it's clearer what the question asks. And if you end up with a number that is, I don't know, odd or weird, you can easily spot it. So after all of these challenges, progress happened. So here I have some screenshots of how Helm looks. So that's on the left is how Helm looks in the PDF, like some part of the theory and the key point, and how it looks on Stack. On the same time, the University of Bath and the MAS team, they translated Helm to HTML, mainly for accessibility reasons. They don't have, like, you can't work on the questions online for that, but you have all the materials in a more accessible format. So here is the task, how it looks on Helm on the left and how it looks on Stack on the right. So people can type in their answers and they can check if the answer is correct or not and receive some feedback. So that was the first summer. And during the last year, some updates happened, of course. So during the first summer, we didn't have any interactive graphs at all. So if a question had any kind of graphs, we just have the image Helm provided, and we didn't have any randomization because it was harder to create interactivity. So the last summer, we hired 2 interns and they did an amazing job. So they created JSX graphs in some of the Helm questions. So now we have some interactive elements. We tried to provide better feedback. So a lot of Helm questions, they just had, you know, one potential response tree. So correct answer, correct, marked as correct, the wrong answer marked as incorrect. And on the first year, we didn't have more sophisticated potential response trees to give better feedback. So we went and updated a lot of the questions. So now people receive better feedback. And okay, that's a future thing. Chris gave a talk, I think it was last week, of being able to give free text answers. So students write an answer, free text, and receive some feedback and don't get penalized, I don't know, for like a type or things like that. So I avoided literally, I avoided these questions as a devil, even if string was an option, and most of the Helm questions were like a drop down list for students to choose. So this feature is not available yet. It will be available in the next stack release over the summer, but this is a question I created on our development server, which is different from the demo server. And that's the Helm question, the existing Helm question on the left with like the drop-down list. Like on the right, I just replace the drop-down with a string option so people can type in. And that's the screenshot of the Maxima code with the two lists, what you allow, what you deny. And I think I allow the local minimum, but like minimum, just minimum, maybe it's the wrong answer, I don't know. People can have opinions on that. So how we use the workbooks in our teaching. So the School of Mathematics, we have 2 courses designed for engineers and chemists, and they have around 500 students per year. The course organizer is Dr. David Quinn. So in the past, we had different stack quizzes, assessing somehow every week's lecture. So the last 2 years, we used one help workbook per week, which is like 3 to 4 sections. So one lecture is more or less one Helm workbook. So that served as the first introduction to each topic. Students could go there and work through the workbooks and introduce themselves with each week topics. So we have a separate stack quiz as like a small assessed quiz for marks. So the Helm workbooks didn't have any marks attached to them, to the students. They worked on them, they took the score, but the mark didn't count for any formal mark. And of course, we had some video lectures to expand on the theory, and they had access on the book as well. So on the year 20, the academic year 2020-21, everything was online. So also the workshops and everything. This academic year, we kept the Helm and online lectures. We had some in-person workshops for the students, but the structure was more or less the same on both academic years. So students gave a very positive feedback on Helm workbooks, especially when they were asked what they find more useful in the course. I think all of them valued the stack workbooks as the most useful resource, and especially the check button, that they could go there and write their answer and then click the check button and receive feedback if the answer was correct or not, or a bit more specific feedback of what they probably did wrong. So of course, students, that was for first year mathematics. So our first year students who then went to the second year engineering mathematics, they actually asked for more Helm workbooks. They had access on the Helm link to work on the Helm materials if they wanted to, but they specifically asked for stack workbooks. So there is some discussion happening to create the relevant materials for the second year teaching, which is not offered from the School of Mathematics, or it's offered from the School of Engineering. So the future plans is to review the missing materials and try to complete the set. So we created mainly the materials we need for our teaching, and we haven't finished like translating the whole Helm into online workbooks. So we want to release the materials. So this always gets postponed. I think at the beginning it was to have some version control on Helm, but this probably won't happen. But we can release the materials soon, and then we have the discussions of using the Helm for second year engineering. So what we have, as I said, what we need. So Helm, there are 47 students' workbooks, which in total are 190 sections. More or less 2/3 of the materials have been translated into Stack. We're missing 80 sections for now. And during this summer, I'm working in a few more workbooks. So by the end of the summer, I will have 10 more sections ready. Of course, these sections won't be tested, okay? Just created. because the materials we used in our testing, they've been through 2 years of used with students and they're heavily tested. So hopefully they're more or less error-free, but the materials that are just created, not tested, they may need some testing at some point. So to create quality online learning materials, it requires a team effort. First of all, we need to have a robust online platform like Stack and the Moodle virtual learning environment. We need well-designed materials like the Helm workbooks, a tested delivery format as is the structure of FSC, and we need to have an agreed style guide so that we have high delivery standard. And of course, it requires a lot of people to do the job. And yes, I think I need to give a lot of thanks to the interns we had over the last 2 academic years, and they helped a lot to create this project. Okay, thank you for attending.
Thank you, Konstantina. And I think
should I stop sharing?
Yeah, perhaps. Thank you, and I think we can appreciate Konstantina by the reactions on Zoom. I think we can take some questions and reactions before we move to the next talk. I'm not seeing anything on the Moodle link yet. Yeah. Yes, but do we have a comment or yes, Colin had a comment, I think, on the chat. I think.
Yeah, about the question notes.
Want to voice it, Colin?
Yes, you were just talking about question notes. What I normally do is just pick up some text from the actual question text, enough, of course, to make that question unique as opposed to any of the other variants of that question. And well, I'm not saying it's the best thing to do, but it seems to work as far as I can see.
So you do something that is not just a list of variables. And I think probably it was my fault because I didn't really explain what it means meaningful. You know, you have a bunch of interns, you try to give a very quick introduction on Stack and you say, write something meaningful, but it wasn't very clearly communicated.
Right, yes. I mean, as I say, I just copy the core sentence or two from the question itself.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So let me check again if you have some questions. Yes. So we actually. Yes, so we have a question actually from Gareth on the Moodle side, and he's asking, maybe you missed this, but he's asking whether the Helm Stack resource is available as an open resource.
So they haven't released.
Colleagues. Is it available? Or is
they haven't released yet
sorry.
As an open education resource. This is the plan to happen. But of course, if people want to use them, they can have access on them. Like everything lives in our demo site. And a lot of people, some colleagues, I think from Norway, they already started translating Helm and use them for their teaching. So of course, if people want to use them, they can give them access to the demo site and look what they're there and ask for what they need. So the plan is to get released soon, but hasn't decided the exact date yet. And I think because Stack will have an update and Moodle will have an update on Moodle 4, probably it's better to wait and make the release after all these updates and in case there are some issues.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have a hand from Christian. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to say that the original workbooks are now released under Creative Commons. I've put the link in the chat and I'll do that on the Moodle site as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, yeah. Thank you for that. I think we can continue the conversation. And start, please, on Constantina's talk. Please keep the questions and discussion coming. Maybe we'll save some time at the end, and maybe we'll revisit some. I think Constantina, she will be around, right? Yeah, throughout the. Yeah, I think we can move to the next talk. So our next talk is by Margaret and Ruth. They're talking about optimizing STEM examination for digital and remote delivery, and they're looking at a case study. And I hope Margaret or Ruth, I don't know who's going to share the screen. Please go ahead and feel.
Jared, yes, I'll just share my screen right now.
Yep.
And if you can see that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I'm going to move the controls and go into presentation mode. So thank you very much, Jared. Thank you, everybody. My name is Margaret Brindle. I'm here with my colleague Ruth. Ruth, give us a shout.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. And we're from the Centre of Learning for Learning Innovation and Quality in Pathways, in Kaplan International Pathways. And for those of you who are not familiar with Pathways, with Kaplan, we are providers of Pathways programs for international students who wish to pursue either undergraduate or postgraduate studies in a UK university. We have a network of Pathway colleges in the UK, and we offer foundation certificates, pre-master courses, pre-doctorate courses, and pre-sessional courses to around 6,000 students annually. But in today's presentation, we wanted to tell you about our transformative journey on the changes of assessment in STEM subjects in one of our programs, in foundation certificate programs. And we've been involved in that for the last 12 months. And we've led this project to optimize STEM examination for remote delivery. And it's the lessons from this project that we thought might be interesting for you to find out from us, and this is what we'd like to share today. So I'm going to hand it over to Ruth first to give us an overview of what the STEM curriculum looks like in Pathways and what it was like in this project. So over to you, Ruth.
Thanks, Margaret. So yes, we have in our cross-college STEM curriculum, we have got 8 STEM modules covering maths, science, statistics, information technology. And in the academic year 2021, we had over 4,200 students from 104 nationalities that had the option to study at least one of those modules. And a number of the students, the foundation science and engineering students, would typically be studying 2 or 3 of these STEM modules. So the assessments in these modules include 14 exams alongside other assessments. And it's these 14 exams that have been the focus of our project for the past 12 months. So we started in March 2021. We were given a mandate to develop assessments ready for the academic year 21-22. And the project team involved more than 50 subject matter experts who were made up of college-based teaching staff. And they were working on creating assessment content for, across those 14 exams, 97 separate topics. So the first thing that needed to be addressed was the assessment design. How do we effectively test our students, ensuring that the experience is optimal for both digital and on-campus students, because we had both at the time and we will continue to have both at least for the foreseeable future.
Thanks,
so how
Ruth.
are we going to do that testing?
Thanks, Ruth. So as probably most of you, we also experimented with different types of assessments during the lockdowns throughout the pandemic, and some of these novel assessments were quite interesting, and they had desirable, authentic feel that everybody is after. But they did also cause a lot of reliability and validity concern, and they were proving extremely resource heavy and therefore not sustainable forward. So the question for us was not really whether we want to get rid of exams. It was more about how do we optimize these exams for delivery that is flexible and applicable to both remote and face-to-face students. And we wanted to address those three key questions of validity. Many of the module learning outcomes being tested stated specific skills that need to be demonstrated, and exams can test these skills and knowledge quite directly, whereas with these authentic methods, at times it is quite an indirect type of assessment, and that requires greater degree of interpretation, and that can sometimes lead to international students being put at a disadvantage, especially with regards to the linguistic capacity that they have. Second of all, we wanted to address the issue of reliability. As Ruth was mentioning, we have a network of colleges with over 4,000 students taking these assessments, so we want to have a comparable and a replicable experience as far as assessment is concerned for all of these students. And it's really difficult to produce authentic assessments or project work that will give that kind of equivalent experience in terms of the level of difficulty and the level of distanciation of marking that can be achieved with these authentic assessments. And then last but not least, we wanted also to address the issue of security, because we quickly realized that with those authentic forms of assessments and project and the alternative forms, it's the scope for academic misconduct was quite large. So we wanted to reduce that significantly. So we were convinced that we wanted to keep the exams, but we needed a much more sustainable solution to producing and administering exams quickly and in a flexible format, and something that will be easily scalable. So to that end, we've decided to adopt a digital item banking model for exam content development and for the storage and for the administration. And we wanted it to be hosted on our Moodle VLE. We use Moodle as well. So how did we do this? So for each module, first of all, we had a group of subject matter experts, and they each came up with a blueprint, and that specified in very granular detail the content of items that were to be used to test very specific module learning outcomes. And there was details to the degree of the difficulty level of each item, the number of marks that was supposed to be allocated, any kind of stylistic requirements as well, the instructions, the formatting, if there was a kind of frame of type questions, what kind of frame we would be using there. And it also specified how these items were then to be incorporated into fully fledged exams. So we're basically talking about what the structure of the fully fledged exam would be like. And these blueprints were used then to develop multiple items, and all of these items went through a thorough quality assurance. And until the point was reached where these items were ready to be signed off and therefore ready for the digitization process. And that next stage took part within the VLE itself. Each item was digitized and again quality assured and tested, not just for accuracy, but also in terms of how it performs within the environment of the VLE. And once that process of quality assurance was finished, we were then ready to actually bank those items. So we created question banks for each module, for each specific topic within that module that we wanted to test. At this point in time, we reached about 600 items that we have banked, which are live and ready to be used in our exam. Some of them are automark, some of them allow for hybrid marking, manual marking, and some of these are multiple choice, others are constructed response, so kind of a free form answer too. And they are now being used to create exams. However, I'm going to now hand over to Ruth to tell us a little bit more of how that's actually done on Moodle.
Thanks, Margaret. So yeah, the exams are delivered as quizzes on the Moodle our Moodle virtual learning environment. So the platform has been used by college staff for delivering learning materials for a few years now. So the staff and the students are very familiar with logging on to Moodle, with logging on and accessing different materials on there. So it's a logical step to expand this to our assessment delivery as well. To make the process as user-friendly as possible, we've created templates. So staff can use these templates to create a standardized set of instructions, and we have a standardized appearance to the exams. So we're ensuring that consistent approach across all of the modules and all of the colleges. Because we've gone with item banks and the items are stored by topic, questions can be drawn at random from a topic. So if, for example, you're making a maths exam, you can draw one at random from the quadratic section and then one at random from the trigonometry section. And because the questions have been designed according to the blueprint, each question within a topic is equivalent. So it's equivalent in terms of difficulty, it's equivalent in terms of marking. As the exams are delivered digitally, we also needed to consider how the students submitted their answers. To ensure accessibility, we have alternative ways that students can answer their questions. So they can either type them directly into the VLE using a text box. They also, if they're using the text box, have access to the math type plugin if they're wanting to use any symbols or formulae, anything like that. We also have an option to upload files. So if students are required to draw diagrams or plot graphs or have particular accessibility issues, they can produce their work on paper, photograph, and then upload it directly into the question. And to ensure security of administration, these exams are invigilated, either over Zoom if they are remote students, or if they are face-to-face in colleges, then it would be in person. So we've been using the item banking and the assessment creation model for the last 6 months now. It's been live in colleges, and we've noticed a number of benefits to this approach. We've got increased reliability. The exams and therefore the results are more reliable and valid. This is a direct result of the robust design and QA process. We've got streamlined, more accurate marking, especially where auto marking is used, and the standardization of the processes has all contributed to the increased reliability. Secondly, we've got improved security of our exams. Students can't download a copy of the exam paper. It's only presented to them on screen. There is no download option for them. So that makes it much harder for them to be able to share questions with other people. And also it makes invigilation easier, because if the questions are only on screen, then students shouldn't be working away from the screen. So if you're invigilating over Zoom and your student starts turning away and working elsewhere for a period of time, then you know that there's something there to be checked. And this approach has also given us greater flexibility and scalability and sustainability, because the assessments can be delivered in a number of different ways. We can also add to the question banks incrementally. We don't have to write an entire exam paper in one go. We can add to topics as and when we need additional questions. So one of the major benefits that we've had as well is that it's far more efficient in terms of resource management. So staff can be asked to create 4 questions for one topic, making sure that they follow the blueprint. And that's much more manageable than asking them to create an entire exam paper. So we can share workload around between our subject matter experts, and we can manage the workload much more easily. It wouldn't be a project if there weren't some challenges along the way. So alongside all these benefits, there are some challenges as well, particularly when we're looking at items that are auto-marked. It can be difficult to design items that are suitable for auto-marking. Often with our STEM subjects, it's the working out that we actually want to see rather than the final answer. So students being able to demonstrate those skills, you have to consider the design of your question very carefully. We don't want students to be losing marks just because they put an answer in a slightly different format to the one that we're expecting. We also face some barriers around staff digital literacy, particularly staff administering exams, both formative and summative. These summative exams, obviously, they're very high stakes for our students, and we want to make sure it's right. And it's not always the teaching staff that are administrating these. Sometimes it's college services, so that the range of digital literacy can vary quite a lot. So this has translated into a need to offer enhanced support and mentoring when we're launching the project to make sure that staff get the support that they need. Student digital literacy also was very, very variable. Our students come from a huge number of different backgrounds. They have a huge number of different levels of experience with not just online learning, but online assessments, different levels of technology. We have students from some countries where Wi-Fi is particularly an issue, where access to technology may be an issue. So we've had to consider all of that as well. And very specific to this project, we've had some challenges around staff perceptions and engagement. So lack of familiarity with digital assessments, fear of the unknown or fear of new assessments, or prior poor assessment experiences can all influence how staff have approached these innovations. And last but not least, the sheer size of the project. So 8 modules, 14 exams, 97 separate topics, over 50 members of staff, and over 4,000 students. It is a lot of different elements to manage.
Indeed. So we essentially had a very steep learning curve throughout the last 12 months. It was enjoyable. It was very insightful as well. So we wanted to share a few lessons that we have learned along the way. Ruth mentioned just a second ago about staff perceptions, and we always know that student and staff perceptions can vary and to various degrees as well. But what was particularly interesting to learn was how pronounced these differences were when it came to these digitized exams. Staff perceptions were either very positive or very, very negative. We had the whole spectrum of attitude, and they always translated into quite a significant impact on the messages that were going to students about these assessments. But we've also learned that actually staff can make assumptions about what or how students feel about these digitized exams, which are not necessarily congruent with actual student feelings. So when you want to find out how students feel, don't ask the staff, ask the students directly, which we did. It was also very apparent to us, a few months into the project, despite very careful planning and trying to estimate very carefully the different durations of stages. Things invariably took longer than we thought they would, particularly as far as the quality assurance was concerned. And we very quickly understood that these stages of checking and revising and reviewing couldn't be rushed, because that invariably led to slips and could impact the students' experience with those assessments. So things take time, quality assurance takes time, and it really cannot be rushed. We've also learned that not every teacher is a good assessment developer. There sometimes is this perception that every teacher can also be an assessment writer, and it's not always the case. This is a very specific set of skills, and you know, if you are working on a project for assessment developers, and if you want to involve your staff as the core sort of team, you probably also need to consider the fact that you might need to do a considerable amount of training, either prior to beginning item development, or offer a lot of mentoring as you go along. So that can also impact the time of the project overall. And last but not least, we also learned that with, like with any sort of innovative solution they introduce at scale, practice and familiarization are key, both for staff and for students. So that led us to creating a lot of formative opportunities for students and for staff to play around with these assessments in a very low stake environment that helps them get more confidence and prepares them for the actual assessments which happen in a kind of summative fashion. So we also made sure that these formative opportunities are built into the course and start as early in every of those courses, in all of these 8 modules that were part of this project, as early as possible. So you might wonder what's next for us in this project. So Ruth, where are you taking this next?
So we have achieved a lot. But there are still ways that we can improve the student experiences, as well as making sure that the banks are fit for purpose in the future. So our next step developments are expanding the use of math type. We have it available for students, but we don't do a lot of promotion of it. It's an option that students can use if they're comfortable with it. But we are looking to expand the use. We're running a small scale trial in September in 2 of our colleges, encouraging students to enter their calculations, equations directly into the VLE rather than writing them on paper and uploading them. So this will particularly target key modules where you've got to show you're working out. We're also looking to expand the item banks. We're looking to make sure that we have got enough items to be able to create unique exams for every cohort of students over the next 3 years as a bare minimum. While we are expanding the bank, we are looking at accessibility. We want universal design to be something that is not an add-on afterwards, but is built into the question. So things like the formatting, the fonts, the colour schemes are all being reviewed to ensure maximum accessibility, and all of our questions are accessible by screen readers. And in order to support our students transitioning to online exams, we are producing more formative materials. So as Margaret mentioned, practice and familiarisation. While we had practice exams initially, we're now expanding that to weekly class tests, weekly homework, and we will also be helping staff supporting their improved digital assessment literacy in a series of workshops where staff can experience the student perspective of these assessments, and some hands-on workshops where they are encouraged to get involved in the development of more formative materials that they can use specifically targeted to their students. Because although we can create formative materials, we would have to do generic ones appropriate for every college, whereas if staff have those digital skills that they can create their own, then they can make them much more targeted to their individual students.
And that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very good presentation. And I think all of us, you should join me in thanking the presenters using the reactions on Zoom. Yeah, so time for questions, and I have some questions on the Moodle chat. Obviously, and the first one is, I think, Christian is also joining me in congratulating you for very good job done, and he has a couple of people who will be referring to who want to start also e-assessment projects. But then, having said that, he has some specifics which I can try to voice, and if I miss anything, he can join us. So he will want to know the people, the number in the team who were involved in the project in various processes, for example, in each stage. For example, the bank creation, were the same people in the bank creation also involved in, for example, making blueprints, development and checking, all were the distinct teams involved. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good question. Ruth, do you want to take that since this was your bread and butter?
I'll take this one. Yeah, so what we did initially was we asked for a subject matter expert, a member of teaching staff from each college for each module, because we're very conscious that our colleges all have their own sort of unique student profiles. We wanted to make sure that everything was appropriate for as many, for all of our students. So we had teams dedicated to each of the 8 modules, with a member of staff from each of our colleges on each team. So, for example, we had on our advanced statistics course, it runs in 9 colleges. So we had 9 members of staff on the team, and they worked together to agree exactly what the assessment would look like. They worked together to agree the blueprint. And when it came to developing items, we set up, not quite a rota, but we set up a system where if one person was writing questions on that topic, then a second person from a different college would be reviewing them. And then once they've been digitized, a third person from a different college again would review again. So every question had been passed at least 3 individual experts to make sure that we had got that quality experience. So yeah, this is why we've got over 50 members of staff involved, spread across the 8 modules. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you should. Christian, does that, yeah.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so another question, you talked about assessment. This is again from Christian. He asks, like, you had this assessment which was auto-marked, and then you had this assessment, most likely, which was maybe checked by tutors and so on. So maybe on what kind of questions were these which were auto-marked? Did you use something like, IE assessment, like editor, like Stack or something? Did you use something? And what kind of questions were you able to check? Was this question which needs follow through marking and so on? Yeah, he's interested in that.
It's been a bit of a journey with auto-marked questions. At the moment, we are using a combination of the standard item types that are built into Moodle, and we are also using WIRIS quizzes, question types. We have that as a plugin into our Moodle. We did try Numbus, and apologies, Christian, we could not get it to integrate with our Moodle. There was a server issue that we just could not get the integration to work. But we do have a number of different ways of depending on the type of question. So because of issues around students answering an auto-mark question, and if there's a slight difference to the formatting, it being marked wrong, we tend to stick with the very simple calculations on things like the first exams that students would do, so that the lower stakes ones, where they're 1-mark questions, have they got it right, yes or no, where there's only a very limited number of options that they could actually enter. We tend not to use the auto-marked item types for longer questions because there's just too much scope for error. So those we do manually marked. But mid-module exams for some of our modules, for the physics, for the statistics, where there's a lot of single mark questions, because it's students just settling into their programme, then yeah, we do use either WIRIS, or we use the standard questions built into Moodle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if Kristen wanted to follow up, but I think, yeah, okay, fine. So I think we have a question from Zach. Please go ahead and ask.
Hi there, Ruth. I heard you mention that you, apart from the electronically marked questions, you also have students submit work because you needn't show workings. I was wondering if you could describe the mechanics of that and how that happens, because I'm interested in that. I mean, I appreciate you want to reduce the marking burden, but I'm a big believer in that, you know, when you're working through a kind of long form question, there's almost like a narrative to how students set things out. And
yeah,
you know.
Absolutely. So what we would do with the longer type questions is students have an option. They can either type their answer straight in to the text box under the question, or they can write their answer on paper, take a photograph, and then upload it as a PDF into the question. And that means that when, as a marker, you come to mark the student exam, when you click on that question, you get their answer, and you also get the grader information. So there will be all of the answers already input into Moodle, so you can compare them side by side.
Right, and that's the answers stored in Moodle somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the lovely thing about doing it that way is you can actually select a question, and then it will automatically give you every student that has answered that question. So you can mark all of the question ones together, so which really helps with consistency as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, any more reactions over a couple of minutes? So first of all, I think we should we can wrap it there. But first of all, before anything else, I think we can thank our presenters again, the two of them, in the two presenters for the two presentations we had. There were three. And then this afternoon, please, we continue, and I'm very sure Ruth will not want to miss this one. It's numbers training. So those bags you could be meeting Christian, and I think you will or someone from numbers to tell us more about numbers and some of the things the low-hanging fruits maybe Kaplan can catch from numbers. Okay. So otherwise, thank you very much for joining us this morning. So we continue in the afternoon, 1600 British time. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.